It is time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us, so pleased to say, the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross and the Times football reporter Charlotte Dunker. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the Back Pages. The Mirror, Levy hits the post. Looks like post, but it's post because Ange sacked because club needs to win league. The Sun has Ruben is our Pep, Manchester United's CEO's bold claim. While Spurs need to win Premier, we want to win Champions League, says Levy. That story covered again. In The Guardian, hard-hitting tennis story. It's hard to contain. Bolter reveals the scale of online abuse. That's Katie Bolter. While they have the Tottenham story as well. Levy, we want a European trophy, but it's not enough. In the Metro, Bolter reveals death threats. While Southgate, they say, has applied to be next Poland manager. And the Star, interesting analogy here. Cunha, Star is tipped to light up Old Trafford like Cantona did all those years ago when he signed tail end of 1992. OK, well, I'll come to you, Charlotte, with John's paper nonetheless. Levy hits the post and sacked because club needs to win league in the back of the Mirror. Spurs chief Ange was sacked because club needs to win league. Europa is not enough. What did you make of Levy's comments, Charlotte? He's come out swinging a bit, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that we actually hear from him. So, yeah, he's come out with a point to prove, hasn't he? And if Thomas Frank didn't know what the objective was before that interview came out, he certainly knows now. He came out, didn't he? And he said that winning a European trophy isn't enough, but it's not the European trophy they want, is it? They want the Champions League. So he's come out, he said they want them to win the Premier League and the Champions League. I mean, he's an ambitious man. He obviously wants the team that he's involved with to win those big trophies. So in that respect, it's not surprising to hear him say that. But given where the season that Tottenham had last season, you'd think the maybe baby steps of even qualifying for the Champions League by finishing in the top 4 or 5 places and competing with those at the top of the table would be an improvement to what we saw from them last season when they lost so many domestic games. So, I mean, he's aiming high, very ambitious. It's going to be interesting to see if they can do that while he's there. I know there's talks of him potentially putting the club up for sale as well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Spurs plays out next season.
It certainly is covered in the Sun as well, John. Spurs need to win Prem and want to win Champions League. Levy is aiming high, the back page of the Sun newspaper. Need, he says, about the Premier League. 25 years in, has he suddenly caught the bug? What do you think, John? What do you make of it?
Well, it's certainly an interesting choice of words, Teddy, because, you know, let's not forget here, Tottenham have come off the back of a season where they've just lost 22 games in the Premier League. Yes, they won a European trophy, which has then got them back into the Champions League. But overall, in Premier League terms, they've been miles off it, basically. And I do think the person at the club who took more stick than anybody amongst the fan base, more than the manager, Ange Postecoglou last season, more than any player, was Daniel Levy. And so Daniel Levy really does speak very rarely publicly. I think that's an issue which does wind up Spurs fans without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, one of the last times that I can remember was just a few, 2 or 3 months into Ange Postecoglou's first season when Spurs had gone briefly top of the Premier League and all things were going great, and then he disappears for 18 months. And so, those sort of things don't go unnoticed by the fan base. And so I do think then that it's a bold decision then to kind of go in the background and then come out sort of on the back of this, when it was an emotive decision, as he rightly says, to get rid of Postecoglou and then obviously make the managerial change to bring in Thomas Frank. And I do think it's a bold decision. It's bold words to say that Spurs need to win the Premier League, because that almost puts pressure on his own kind of running of the club, if you like. And so I do feel that also in turn then puts pressure on Thomas Frank. And I think a lot of Spurs fans will be looking at this and saying, well, OK, part of the reason that we've not been challenging in the last, say, 4 or 5 years, they did, of course, famously reach the Champions League final in 2019. So massive credit on that. But he's Daniel Levy himself. So Levy, in fairness to him, it's good to hear him talk. He needs to do a bit more, because I do think one of the problems is the disconnect between the fans and the sort of kind of the hierarchy of the club. That needs to be addressed. And so as Charlotte rightly says, it's baby steps at the moment, but the best thing you can do is win football matches. But I also think a key thing connecting with fans is actually liaising, talking to them, connecting with them. And that's something that Spurs have let themselves down on very, very badly in the last few seasons.
Interesting that John picks up the Champions League final in 2019, because I know there's a lot of disgruntlement in the Tottenham support base. They didn't invest at that point. The Guardian covering the story as well. Levy's comments: we want a European trophy, but it's not enough. I suppose, Charlotte, as journalists, the frustration, this was the in-house media team. Sure, a fantastic team, but a little bit softball, as you might expect. He wasn't challenged necessarily from what we've seen in terms of his statements. Do you think Frank's under pressure, or is Levy under pressure to deliver if the aim is the title? Because he's had title-winning managers there before, but they haven't done so well at Spurs as they have elsewhere.
Yeah, well, I think both of them are. It's going to be a massive summer for them, isn't it, in terms of what they do to invest, what they do to help Frank, what is Tottenham going to look like under Thomas Frank, what sort of players does he want to bring in? We know what he's done at Brentford. We know how capable he is of bringing players in and increasing their market value, which to someone like Daniel Levy is music to his ears, given the way that he runs his Tottenham side. But for them to really go and compete at the top of the league, they need to be bringing in these big names. They need to be bringing in these game changers, if that's what he genuinely wants them to do, to come in and win the Premier League and close the gap to take them from 17th to 3rd to 2nd to 1st. That is a massive gap that they've got to close domestically. So they need some big signings this summer. They need to back Frank. Obviously, the pressure's on Frank. He just needs to look at the guy that he's replacing. The guy won them the first trophy in 17 years. Yes, they had a terrible, terrible domestic campaign, but he brought that trophy and the joy to those fans over in Spain in the Europa League final. So even then, winning a trophy isn't enough. So Frank knows going in there what sort of job he's got. He knows how ruthless Levy can be. Look what happened, how the manner in which they sacked Jose Mourinho. He knows that even winning a trophy isn't going to make his job safe. So both of them are under pressure. But Daniel Levy, who we all know to be a very shrewd businessman, very shrewd operator, even clubs have come out and even privately said that they hate dealing with him because of the negotiations that go on. It's going to be a really interesting summer transfer window for Tottenham if they want to turn things around and do as Levy says and take this team from the bottom of the Premier League all the way to the top.
Interesting summer ahead. John, quick one, because we do have to move on to Manchester United. But on that note, it's about transfers. It gets our attention, it gets the fans' attention. But this is about salaries, isn't it? They need to pay more. That's basically the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, they do. They're by no means the biggest players in the Premier League. They also, Ange Postecoglou was on record, I think, last season, basically saying that he could never see a time when they would spend even over £80 million on a player. It's just not the Tottenham way. What I would say, in fairness to the Tottenham hierarchy, is if you look at their net spend is actually really big. I think the last count, it was up there with sort of the top 4 of the Premier League clubs. So I don't think you can accuse the board of not backing the managers in the market. But I do think you could say that they spend big money, but they tend to spend it rather badly. And that's the point. So they've got to be better investors. They've got to be better spenders, recruiters. And they've got to really get behind Thomas Frank now and kind of really make sure they go from strength to strength. So, look, there's loads of positives there. There's loads of things to build on. But I do think that connectivity between the fan base and the hierarchy of the club, it's interesting, Levy did it alongside his new CEO. And I do think, that's a big role, because they will appreciate that they really need to kind of connect again with the fan base and really get the fans back on board. It's a big, big season ahead, I think, for Spurs, and they have to get it right this summer.
It's been a day for executive speaking as well, Charlotte. Let's take you to the Sun. We'll juxtapose this with the Express. The Sun has Ruben is our Pep, United boss, back to follow up his bad first season with title by 2028. And from the same interview with Omar Barada, new buy swaggers like Icon Cantona, says United chief Uar Cunha. What do you make of Omar Barada's comments, Charlotte? No pressure then on
Yeah, I get the sentiment in terms of what he's trying to say in comparison to Pep Guardiola. But with all due respect, when Guardiola arrived in England, he'd won 2 Champions League and he'd won 6 titles with Barcelona and Bayern Munich. So I don't really think we're comparing like for like. I understand what he was saying in terms of, well, how long would it take Pep to adjust to English football and were people going to give him time? But Manchester City finished, I think it was 3rd in Guardiola's first season in charge. Yes, they were trophyless, but I think the job that Amorim has got to do at Manchester United is far bigger than the one that Pep Guardiola had to do at Manchester City. I get the comparisons. He was backed that summer and look what he's gone on to achieve. And Manchester United can dream if Amorim has the same impact at Manchester United as Pep has had at Manchester City. So, yeah, he mentioned there as well, didn't he, Cunha? And obviously they can only hope that he has the same transformative effects that Eric Cantona had at the club back in the early 90s. They hadn't been winning before then. He came in with his swagger and his attitude and he turned that around, and then they went on to dominate for the next 15 or so years. So yeah, if Cunha can have the same impact as Cantona and Amorim can have the same impact as Guardiola, then yeah, maybe Manchester United can go back to dominating for the next 10, 15 years, but they're very, very big ifs at the moment.
Yeah, the Star headline, John, Cunha, Star tipped to light up Old Trafford like Cantona. He got them over the line, didn't he, in 92, 93 after the long wait. Did Eric Cantona? What do you make of that likening?
Well, it's a bold one, isn't it? To be honest with you, I don't really see it, to be honest. I kind of see what he's trying to make in the kind of the correlation about his giving us a lift. But they're such different players in terms of, you know, positionally and kind of what they might bring to the team. I do actually think Cunha is a bit of a gamble, but I like it. I just think he's a little bit different. He's also got a bit of temperamental, you know, behaviour in him, a bit of devilment, and maybe that is the other point that Berardo is making it really, and kind of just brings something different to the table, a little bit imaginative and innovative, and something that unpredictable and sort of kind of really impetuous about him. I think Cunha. Listen, if they end up the summer and actually being able to recruit a number 9, that's a big if, by the way, but also Cunha on the left and Bruno on the right. I tell you what, Man United fans, I think, will start the season with a lot of optimism. There's a big if, a lot of big ifs in there, to be honest. But again, going back to what we touched on before with the Tottenham kind of conversation, it's good to see that Berardo actually is, you know, putting his head above the parapet. I think this was from originally from a Man United fanzine, wasn't it? United We Stand was the interview. So I actually kind of applaud that basically he's engaging with fans and kind of actually having a say. And, you know, United have really taken a lot of stick for various reasons on and off the pitch. And frankly, quite rightly so on various issues. So the fact is that Berardo's putting himself in front of a fan outlet there, and indeed a fan, and basically, you know, trying to sort of kind of talk up the positives. I'm not so quite sure I'm sold really on Cunha and Cantona, but I tell you what, some of the other stuff I think he sort of says, actually, I'm on board with. I think it's quite positive and it's quite a bit of a lift, really, and I think the fans will quite like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope he's anything like Eric Cantona. It'll be amazing to see for Man United fans and neutrals. Let's look at another aspect of that interview and ambition, similar maybe to Levy, Charlotte, in the Telegraph. James Ducker reporting that Amorim can win Premier League by 2028, says Berardo. I don't know, is this wildly optimistic or what Manchester United fans would expect? Charlotte, you cover the club a lot. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think this is just following on from something that was said to staff when Berardo came in. I think it was at the start of the season, actually. They set out this project that they want to win the 21st title by the 150th anniversary, which is in 2028. So it's just following that thread on it. I think it is something that they genuinely believe can happen. I think they believe that they've gone through the hard yards now with Amorim by bringing in mid-season. The acceptance was that everything was going to be really difficult. He was going to stick to this structure of 3-4-2-1. It was going to be really hard to bring that mid-season, but then they were going to reap the rewards of it next season because they struggle through for the second half of the campaign. He'd get a full pre-season. He'd be fully backed in terms of transfers. And then in theory, they believe he is the right man to take them through to get winning a Premier League title again. So there is that genuine belief there that if he gets the right players in this summer and the players that are there have adapted to his training methods, to his tactics, to the system that he wants them to play, that next season will be much, much better. But all these comments and all these statements, all it really does as well is it piles the pressure on Amorim. Amorim speaks so well in press conferences. He knows the pressure that's on himself. He even said before the Europa League final, if we lose this, I'm going to be under even more pressure next season. He knows he has to deliver. The teething problems, the injuries, all the excuses that he could hide behind in those first 6 to 8 months, they've disappeared. So especially if they back him this summer, with all these targets that are on top of his head as well, he knows that they're going to have a great start to the next campaign, because as much as he is their man, how long can he last if they start next season as badly as they ended last season?
It's going to be a fascinating watch, isn't it, to see the new look Manchester United after the summer. Charlotte, John, thank you. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Mirror on the other side of Manchester. Pep's ready to unleash his third City side in America after a £300 million rebuild. Watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross and the Times football reporter Charlotte Dunker. Charlotte, I'll come to you with the back page of your paper, The Times, your colleague.
It is disgusting. I think we all know that there's depths of the internet where people feel like they can say what they want to people. It doesn't matter what people do as jobs. It doesn't matter if she's a successful tennis star or not. People just shouldn't be saying these sorts of things to anyone. And I think we've spoken time and time before about what social media companies can try and do to try and eradicate this. I know that the WTA have looked at ways as well to try and block out this sort of hate and block out this sort of abuse. And I think absolutely fair play for her to come out and talk about it, because she